Today's June 6, 2022, 1944 is sticking out because of D-Day, Operation Overlord. Victory Day. In any event, now I see D-Day, World War II, a battle. Okay, this message is called Ratified Not So Fast. The thing is, there are some people who are in positions and they think because they've arrived in a position, because they've gotten into that position, that they have arrived. Some may start thinking they can't be unseated. Some may start thinking they cannot be replaced. Ask Queen Vashti, who when she wouldn't fulfill her marital obligations, that she was put away, and someone better than her was put in her position. King Saul, rebelling against God, became king, and he reigned good 40 years, but he was also thrusted out of his position. The Lord found someone better than him. So think about ratified. Not so fast, my friend. Not so fast, my friend. Lee Corso. But in fact, not so fast. Some people think that because they reach a certain point that they have arrived. Some as if they can't be unseated, they can't be replaced. 4 days ago, June 2nd, I was inspired to write this poem that I shared in a message. I'm not sure if it's premiered yet. At the time I didn't have a name for the poem, but the poem is called Ratified. And I'll share it because it also applies to this message. You walked down the aisle and stayed a little while, but then you were tried and you clearly lied. You connived to achieve what you lustfully desired. However, you were waiting and found wanting, so you were fired. So to break this down, you walked down the aisle and stayed a little while. That literally means getting married and being in a marriage for a little while. Could have been a few hours, could have been 3 days like Kim Kardashian at one point in time, or it could have been several years. So walking down the aisle, making vows, and for some people even consummating the marriage, and stayed a little while. But then you were tried, and clearly you lied. So being tried, lies can only take a person to a certain point. Jacob married Rachel, but when he woke up the following morning, come to find out, he had actually married Leah. See, her father lied, she lied, but morning came. The lights were turned on. She was tried, and she lied. You connived to achieve what you lustfully desired. So it's based on lust, not love. However, you were weighed and found wanting, so you were fired. In Daniel 5, King Belshazzar, he saw the writing on the wall. They called for Daniel. Daniel gave the interpretation, the word of the Lord. He was told, you've been weighed and found wanting. That night he was executed. He was assassinated. So there are people, such as in this example, thinking that even getting married, that because they've made quote-unquote marital vows, that it can't be undone. So if that does not guarantee safety, when a person uses a lie, uses a fraud to base up marriage, why do some people feel so safe with the Lord? Recently, the Carafree Games were held in Kingston, Jamaica, and the Jamaican national team had an under-20 team of young women, and they won the 4x100 meter race in world record time. The stadium erupted. The nation was joyous. But the thing is, even though the race had been won, even though they had world record time, there are some steps that are needed for ratification, for those things to become codified. Several things. They had to check the track to make sure it was 400 meters. They had to look at stuff to include that the baton was exchanged in the exchange zone. Not too early, not too late. They checked the wind speed to ensure it's less than what, plus 2.0 meters per second. And then this is what got them. Each member of the team had to be drug tested. One of the young ladies, she had won the 100-meter individual race, and she was drug tested for that. And it seemed as if there was a mix-up where people thought, well, because she was drug tested for the individual race, she didn't need to be tested for the team race, which makes sense. But the thing is, for the race to be ratified, each member had to be drug tested. And because one person, who, even though previously drug tested, was not drug tested for that individual, they were disqualified from getting the record, or at least that record. Imagine that. So it's like a legal case being thrown out for a technicality. So there are people, they've gotten comfortable by thinking that because they got to a certain point, that they can't be replaced, they can't be unseated. Queen Esther didn't fulfill her marital duties, was thrown out, replaced. Or Queen Vashti didn't fulfill her marital duties and was thrown out by another, someone better than her, Queen Esther. King Saul, in his rebellion, the Lord found a man after his own heart, someone better than King Saul, David. So with things, and not necessarily about our salvation, but there are things in this life that are subject to ratification. And many people are thinking that because they've gotten to a certain point, then they've arrived. And some will get unseated. Because the poem about you walked down an aisle and stayed a little while, but you were tried and you clearly lied. And the thing about being fired, that means a person was put away. The marriage was ended because it was based on fraud. And you think after making vows, then that would stand. But it could not withstand the scrutiny of the truth. And the thing about something need to be ratified. And there are many things in this life that on the surface everything may be good, but it needs to be ratified. In Matthew 20 verse 16, the Lord said, "So the last shall be first, and the first last. For many be called, but few chosen." Again, some people think that because they reach a certain point, that they've made it all the way, but they can still be thrown out. In Matthew 10 verse 22, the Lord said, "And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. But he that endureth to the end shall be saved." In Matthew 24:13, the Lord said, "But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved." So some people, they have made it to a certain point, and they think they're good to go. But based on certain steps for ratification, they end up getting disqualified, and everything they've done gets thrown out. Could someone have, quote unquote, bent the rules and say, well, since Miss Clayton was tested for the individual race that she won, we're just gonna make an exception here. Could that have happened? Yes, but it didn't. And just because it didn't mean that the judges were incorrect. The same, what could Jacob have done when he found out that he had married Leah? He ended up marrying Rachel afterwards. So just because a person has gotten to a certain point, it may not always mean they have arrived. What they've done may be subject to ratification. And by the way, there are some things that we do here on earth that the Lord God himself will not recognize. And ultimately, ratification will come from him, the one who judges. In Matthew 23, the Pharisees and scribes looked like they had arrived, but the Lord said they were children of hell. They were children of hell. So just because a person has seemingly reached a certain point, it doesn't mean they have arrived. Matthew 7:21-23. The Lord spoke about those who do many wonderful things in his name. Cast out devils, prophesy, but he'll say, I never knew you. That is the Lord ratifying a situation. Yeah, you did all this stuff in my name. Yes, you know I'm the Lord, but I never knew you. Some people, they have passed a certain point, but they will not make it through the ratification process. As I say ratification, the word rat is standing out. Because sometimes ratification is smelling a rat in what looks like a good situation, but it is absolutely foul. It's like grabbing a rat by the tail and casting it out. So yes, if someone had said, you know what, that young lady was tested for another race, it was within a certain time, we're going to bend the rules for that. It could have been done potentially without protest. But it's because the person or whosoever made the decision said, no, we're not going to accept it. That is how some people will feel. They'll be like, but Lord, I made it this far, and it still won't matter. In Genesis 22, the Lord spoke to Abraham, and told him to sacrifice his son, his only son who he loved. It's like the Lord didn't even recognize that Ishmael was alive. So ultimately, ratification comes from the Lord. And the way I mentioned about how, in a sense, the judges could have bent the rules so that the record for the Jamaican team could have stood. See, the judge did not. People can complain about it, but it's the same way some people, they're going to go through the ratification process with the Lord. They're going to be weighed and found wanting, and they're going to be disqualified from something that they thought they had. The same way King Abimelech thought that he had, let me back up. The same way in Genesis 12, the Pharaoh of Egypt thought that he had Sarah, and he had to give her up. The same way King Abimelech in Genesis 20 thought he had Sarah, but he had to give her up. See, in a sense, those relationships were subject to the ratification process. And the woman, Sarai, and then Sarah, belonged to Abram/Abraham. See, when the Lord judges, and he'll judge fairly, some people will complain about the Lord's judgment, but his judgment is final, and he's the one that ratifies things. So even though he could have given you a break, if he doesn't, he is God Most High, and he's the one who judges. And when he judges, there's no one to appeal to. So I close with the poem again, called Ratified, from June 2nd, 2022. And it's probably like poem 1650 or something like that. So ratified. You walked down the aisle and stayed a little while. But then you were tried, and clearly you lied. You connived to achieve what you lustfully desired. However, you were weighed and found wanting, so you were fired.